Carbon capture and storage has become big news of late in Louisiana and around the globe, in fact. It's a way to reduce carbon emissions from our industrial plants and is considered a key to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050. I talked with two LSU environmental and energy scientists who told me it's really the only hope to reach net zero by 2050.
I think there's a lot of information and maybe misinformation about what it is. So carbon capture is taking CO2, carbon dioxide, from the exhaust of some industrial facility. Here in Louisiana, some of those, like the most important industrial facilities that we have are our fertilizer production, our petrochemical production, things like that. And they produce a lot of CO2. In carbon capture, you capture that CO2 and you inject it underground into usually a sandstone reservoir. Usually those formations would be something like 5,000 feet or more below the surface. So it's a pretty safe process. There are kind of local environmental risks associated with it, like for instance wetland loss or pipeline transportation risks, things like that. But it's pretty safe. And without it, we can't meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. So the Paris Agreement requires us to be carbon neutral by 2050. And there's just no way to do that without carbon capture and storage.
You mentioned wetlands loss.
Yep.
How would that be a problem?
So when they build a pipeline, so imagine you've got a facility, let's say it's an ammonia production facility that releases a lot of CO2, and you want to take that to a place where you can inject it. Maybe that's 10 miles away, maybe that's 15 miles away. But if there's a wetland on that route, you're going to have to put a pipeline through that wetland, and potentially, you would destroy that part of the wetland.
And there's already been enough of that.
There's been a lot of wetland destruction in Louisiana. Yeah.
You're mentioning injecting it into land. What about water?
Yeah. So there's also a lot of interest in injecting underwater. So much like the injection into a land reservoir, injecting into water would go well under the surface of the ocean. So there's a lot of interest in piping it out to the Gulf of Mexico and injecting it into some of those same sorts of sandstone formations.
Carbon capture is one means of essentially addressing this challenge that we have with climate change. It's not the largest potential solution to the problem, but it's one of many. And as I often explain to my students, there is no silver bullet, because if there were, we would have already pulled the trigger on that, right? What makes CCS unique, and I think the reason why this area has become more of a ground zero within the United States for that application, has been that it's probably one of the few ways that we can address our climate change challenge within an industrial framework. It's very easy, for instance, in power generation to substitute a natural gas generator for solar or for wind. What is less easy is going in and substituting a lot of these big combustion processes that we all see up and down the river with electricity and renewable energy. We just don't have that kind of scope in that activity. So if we're going to maintain that industrial activity, what are we going to do to help combat climate change at the same time? We can't maintain the status quo, right? We're going to have to do something. We can't get to renewables or other types of applications, so what's it going to be? And carbon capture is one of those. A lot of people will tell you, well, let's just do solar. Well, that's an option. That might be an option one day, but I can't generate enough electricity to displace 3,000 degree Celsius steam, right?
It's not there today.
It's not there today. I don't know of any electric boiler out there that can do that. Now, we're working on that, and with a lot of technological innovation, I think greater incentives on these things, we'll get there. But I would say in the next 5 years to 10 years and maybe longer, that's going to be a long haul in getting there.
And next week, we're going to hear from the CEO of a water technology company and his approach to carbon capture and storage, which he also says is going to be essential to reach that climate accord standard of net zero.